Hi everyone. So, in light of International Trans Day of Visibility, which was just last month, 31st of March, I thought it would be interesting to look at transgender representation in media and specifically in a Netflix original called, like you might have heard of it, Big Mouth. It's pretty popular. So, yeah, they've introduced a transgender character in their latest season, and I would like to talk about it. So, before we can talk about transgender representation in a relatively recent and newer form of media and television, I think it's important to discuss the background of it, the history of trans representation on television, or like more precisely, the lack of it or the misrepresentation of it, and its effects on society. So, first of all, for a long time, there was a lack of representation for trans people. And since trans people are in the minority, a lot of people will not go about doing whatever they do every day. They won't go around seeing trans people in their day to day lives. So, their only way of forming an opinion on them is through being exposed to them through media. So, it's very important for them to be shown in media so that people know that they exist, and it's also very important for them to be shown in in a proper way so that people don't have misconceptions about them. And the lack of representation has affected not only trans people by making them feel isolated and alone and not really knowing, like when you don't see yourself on screen, you just assume that that you're alone, and that's not what the rest of the world is. For example, as a brown girl, I've always seen white people on screen, and I've always thought, despite living in a majority brown people country, I've always assumed that the world is mostly white. But if you look at it statistically, white people are not actually the majority. It's actually us Asians, we're the majority, but we feel like a minority because of our lack of representation, and then everything that comes along with it, the lack of opportunities and the lack of privilege. So, anyways, back to the lack of representation of trans people in media. This has resulted in trans erasure, like for a long time. And still, I'm pretty sure a lot of people from older generations do not know what being transgender means, and they wouldn't know how to react to a family member or friend coming out as trans. And I think it's very important for them to see that in media so that they're prepared for that and they don't make a mistake. And this has also slowed down the journey towards mass acceptance of the trans community, which might not seem like that big of a deal until you actually look at the statistics and see that people are still being hate crimed and murdered simply for being transgender. And because it hasn't been normalized, people will hate crime things that they see as quote unquote like abnormal. And being trans is very normal, and it should be normalized in the media as well. So, um, when trans representation first started showing up in media, it wasn't actually proper trans representation. It wasn't actual trans characters. It was trans coded characters. So basically, these are characters who are not outrightly stated to be transgender, but they are used as they're portrayed as cis characters with a lot of mostly negative stereotypes associated with transgender people. And they're used as villains. As you can see in this picture, this is the serial killer from Silence of the Lambs. And this character never actually identified as a trans woman, but a lot of their actions, like wearing the skin of their female only um, victims, and like hiding their genitals and other things, trying to like appear more feminine, lead me to believe that this character was transcoded. It was a trans woman, and this character was not portrayed in any normal, not even like forget positive light, just a normal light. This character was portrayed as a deranged serial killer and a sociopath. So, and that is mostly the most of the negative representation that transcoded characters or just trans characters, actual trans characters get are trans women, because society views giving up, quote unquote, giving up your masculinity as like this unbelievable thing, and you would obviously have to be deranged or like out of your mind to do that. And that is why trans women or trans female coded characters are used as villains, or they're also used as for comic relief. Their transness is used as the it takes the blunt of all the jokes. It is the thing that makes them funny. Apparently, that's there. It's not that they're telling jokes or they're finding themselves in funny situations. It's just their entire identity, which is being used. The jokes, they're not making jokes. They are used as the joke, and they're never. And it can't be called. You cannot call them out for it because they never outrightly say that this character is a trans character. It's just a transcoded character, but it's very obvious what they're trying to do. Then there's characters who aren't used negatively, but their transness, in essence, is still used by the show. It's either used like they're used as a one off character, they come in for one episode, and the show gains some brownie points with the audience, like we had trans character, and that's it. Or they're used as less of a person and more of an experience. They're not treated like a character like all the other characters are. They're treated as like the flag holder for transgender people everywhere. They just talk about being trans. That's all they are. They don't have any other thing to talk about. They have nothing else going on. You either see them transitioning or post transition, and it's that is their entire character, just being transgender, which is very unrealistic because people have multiple facets to their personality. They're not just one thing. They're not just their gender identity. That might be part of who they are, might be an important part of who they are, but it's not who all that they are. And in some, even in some modern um, movies and TV shows, trans characters are portrayed through the cisgender lens, which means like oftentimes the people who've made that piece of media are cisgender. They don't really understand the trans experience, but they try to include a trans character and they often fail at it. And often the movie might be about a trans character, but like it's actually about how them being trans is affecting the cis people around them. Like a lot of the times they focus more on the reactions of their friends and their families and how they react to this person coming out as trans and how it's affecting their life and how it changes things for them. For example, I'm sorry I cannot remember the name of the movie, but there is this movie with um I'm so sorry, Eddie Redmayne. He plays a trans woman, and the movie is supposedly about him, but it's actually about her, about the trans woman that he plays, but it's actually about her wife and how she reacts and how essentially her coming out as trans is affecting her wife and making her wife's life miserable, quote unquote. And when I just try to talk about Eddie Redmayne playing a trans woman, it creates confusion with the pronouns because he is a male identifying person playing a trans woman, which is another problem. It's not accurate representation. A trans woman should have played that role. But yeah. Anyways, how does Big Mouth push against all of this? How do they get trans representation right? First of all, they have appropriate casting, something I just spoke about. They have casted Josie Tota, who's an actual trans woman. She recently came out and she was cast for this role. And she recently transitioned, so I think this role was perfect for her. And also the show writers and producers, they've all given her a say. They've given her space, creative freedom to add and give her input to her character. They've told her that if you think we've written something that doesn't actually align with what your character would say, please speak up. And she has been very vocal about it, that she has made changes, and there's been a lot of approval and input from members of the transgender community. Every they seem There's wide acceptance for this character, for Natalie, which is the trans character that was introduced in the latest season of Big Mouth. And the character is realistic. She is a likable character without pandering. This character is not like some saint who has to like walk on eggshells, who's like completely perfect so that she doesn't upset anyone, so that we are forced to like her. No, she has her flaws and she's a person, she has her quirks, and she's still likable. So she's likable without pandering to the majority, to the like cisgendered audience. She's not pandering to us. She's just herself and we like her anyways. We like her because of that, actually. We just like who she is. Her being trans is not something that affects her character. It's just a part of her character. And this character tackles a lot of stereotypes. She's not overly feminized to make up for the fact, quote unquote, make up for the fact that she is trans. She's just a regular teenage girl, and she is not treated differently just for how she identifies. She just because she is trans, her character is not treated like, is not given special treatment. Like, the show makes jokes about everything. The show uses all the characters to make the jokes, and they do that with Natalie as well. They do that with their trans character as well. They do not put her on a pedestal so that they can stay safe and leave her untouched, and like some, they don't other her. They treat her like a normal character, which she is. She is a normal character just like all the other cisgender characters on the show. How Big Mouth got it wrong in the past. So I'm going to show you a clip of a scene from Big Mouth that was released before this, the latest season, before they actually had a trans character. And this scene received a lot of backlash online, and I'll explain that once you've seen the scene.
Oh my god. Okay, it's like some of you borings like tacos, and some of you like burritos. And if you're bisexual, you like tacos and burritos.
Oh my god, I'm fucking hungry now.
But I'm saying I like tacos and burritos, and I could be into a taco that was born a burrito, sure, okay? Or a burrito that's transitioning into a taco, comprende?
Okay.
And honey, anything else on the fucking menu.
So basically, in the past, Big Mouth has been called out for being biphobic and transphobic because, in an attempt to explain the difference between pansexuality and bisexuality, this character, played by Ali Wong, seems to invalidate trans people's identities. Being transgender is treated as separate from being what they actually identify as a trans woman or a man. Like, a trans woman is a woman and a trans man is a man. It's not a separate thing. So it kind of treats them as, it others them, and it treats them as if they're not real men and real women. So they received a lot of backlash for this, for which the creators released a statement and apologized, and um, accepted that it was a it's very complex. It's a very complex thing. Human sexuality and gender identity, everything is very complex to tackle in a animated show that's based on very crass and crude humor. It's very difficult to do that. But they accepted their mistake, and they said that they're listening to the audience, they're listening to people belonging to the community to do better in future seasons. And I think they have delivered in the newest season. The entire audience, the trans community, the queer community, everybody loves the new character, Natalie. And I think it's very important to talk about her and trans representation in the media in general. So yeah, thank you. That's all I have to say.